Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of our quick look at Disney Infinity for Star Wars fans who may be considering playing the game when 3.0 arrives with Star Wars characters and scenarios. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler. In part 2 here we want to look at sort of a backstory of the development of this game in terms of its releases and which platforms it does and does not exist on, and then a little bit about the digital-only version of the game. To start out with, Disney Infinity began with what we think of as either Disney Infinity or Disney Infinity 1.0. That's the one that had no Marvel characters, no Star Wars characters. It was just straight up Disney and Pixar. So Cars, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Incredibles, Monsters University / Monsters Inc., that sort of thing. Now, the initial Disney Infinity 1.0 was released for the Nintendo Wii, the Xbox 360, yes, that is the C-3PO limited edition one from that Connect Star Wars console bundle there. The PlayStation 3, the Nintendo 3DS, sort of, for iOS devices, and for PCs. Eventually, it was also released for the Nintendo Wii U. Now, the Wii version of the game was missing some features, particularly multiplayer features, because it wasn't a system that was really up to the power level and standards of the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Because it was so limited, it was thought of as sort of a substandard version of the game. So when it was eventually released on the Wii U, it was released for free, if you already owned the Wii version, basically. You didn't have to actually put in a code or anything like that. You can just go onto the Nintendo Wii U store, the eShop, and download a free copy of Disney Infinity 1.0. You can still do that at this point. And then you would just use your parts from your Wii version. We'll find that it's also compatible with some others, but that's another video. Use your parts from the Wii version, the Infinity base and your figures, and just jump over and play on the Wii U without having to spend any more money and play a full version of the game instead of the gimped out, wimpy, feature-missing Wii version. Now, the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions, those were essentially the standard versions of the game alongside the later Wii U copy of it, whereas the 3DS version was a little weird. It's not actually Disney Infinity. Notice it says Toy Box Challenge. The 3DS version was a completely different game. The way that it worked was that you had your little pad, you sat your figures on the pad and sort of unlocked them within the 3DS game to put them on a team of 3 figures, 3 characters, and then it played out as a bunch of mini games that you move between as if you're moving through a board on a board game. Completely different game. No toy box mode, no playset mode. Completely and utterly different than anything that we saw with the other versions of the game. Unsurprisingly, it did not get reviewed well compared to its counterparts, and Disney Infinity 1.0 was the only version to be given a 3DS release. After 1.0, the Wii and 3DS would never again see Disney Infinity games, though the Wii U would for Nintendo. Now, I mentioned how there are these digital-only versions. That's what you got on PC and iOS. You see, those games don't actually use the physical figures. You simply log in and play the game. And you can buy figures and buy what are called power coins and such within the digital marketplace. For instance, a $15 figure as a physical figure in a store would cost you about, say, $6 in the digital version of the game. It's a bunch of microtransactions, essentially. But you never have physical figures or physical parts to use, while still being able to play the full game. Now, if you went out and actually bought a figure, though, you would get what's called a web code card. Little thing like this. And these web code cards, on the back, where my thumb is, you would have a code that would unlock all the characters and playsets and such that you just bought physically in the digital-only version of the game. So you wouldn't have to buy something as a figure for another version of the game and then rebuy it in the digital-only version for PC and iPad. Instead, you would just buy the physical version if you wanted to and use the code on the card to get access to those figures in the game. Again, you could buy the figures in the game separately for about $6 as opposed to $15, but it made for a good way to play between platforms. We'll talk about compatibility later. No, your progress does not carry over between the two. Then came Disney Infinity 2.0, also known as Marvel Superheroes, whose big draw was to bring in Marvel characters. Yes, there were other Disney-only characters like Tinkerbell and Maleficent, but the big draw was new Marvel characters. 21 of them, 22 if you count Black Suit Spider-Man that was an exclusive to the Vita starter set that you could only find at GameStop. So 21 or 22 Marvel characters in 2.0's run. Again, 2.0 got a release for the Wii U, but not the Wii or the 3DS. For Microsoft players, it got a release on the 360 and the Xbox One. So it's the first of the next-gen, or what we now call next-gen Disney Infinity games. For Sony players, it was released on PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, again, the first of the next-gen Disney Infinity games, and the PlayStation Vita, along with digital-only updates for the iPad and PC versions of the game. Now note here that means that you cannot get 1.0 for the Vita, for the PlayStation 4, or for the Xbox One. If you're starting playing on those systems, the earliest one you can do is 2.0. However, both the Wii U and the previous next-gen consoles, right, the PS3 and the Xbox 360, they had 1 and 2 also. I would also note here that unlike the 3DS portable version, the Vita portable version has all of the features of the regular game with the exception of local co-op because two people aren't going to play on the same handheld device. Now, among other things, 2.0 introduced Toy Box game discs. We'll talk about that when we talk about components. I did hint a little bit about some of these back in our initial episode about just what is Disney Infinity. Now, as for the PlayStation Vita, it not only did not get a 1.0 game, it's not getting 3.0, the Star Wars one, either. It's just a 2.0 platform at this point. It also, though, for those who are looking for unusual Marvel figures, they're usually pretty good about not having limited edition exclusives that you can only find in certain places most of the time. There is one exclusive for the Marvel figures that does come with the Vita version. If you get the Vita version, you got to buy a starter deck, or a starter set. The only place to find a starter set is GameStop. And in that one package, which is this starter set here, you will get, the only place you can get it, the exclusive Black Suit Spider-Man Marvel figure to play with in-game. Now, if you want to play with the Black Suit, you can just get regular Spider-Man and then get your hands on the power disc that gives you the black symbiote costume. But if you want an actual Black Suit figure, the only way to get him is through the PlayStation Vita starter set. I would also note here moving forward that, again, Xbox One, PlayStation 4 do not have 1.0 versions. They will, however, have 3.0 versions. If you want to be able to get 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0, you're going to have to play on either the Wii U, Xbox 360, or PlayStation 3. Though one wonders whether a new iteration, a Disney Infinity 4 in the future, will still be released for all three of those consoles, or if you're still going to wind up in a position where you can't have the whole series on one platform because of sort of the march of time, so to speak. Now we come to 3.0. That's the one being released here at the end of August 2015, just a short time after these videos are being produced. It is being released on the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Wii U, PC, iPad, and Android. Notice there's no 3DS release or Wii release, even though the Wii's not really a current console, or Vita release. You can get it for Xbox 360 or Xbox One, PlayStation 3, or PlayStation 4, and they're expanding the digital version of the game, the digital-only version, from just being iPad and PC to now iPad, PC, and Android. Now, which platform you pick it up on, if you're trying to pick it up for the Star Wars content of 3.0, is really going to be a matter of personal preference. Personally, because of the way that compatibility works, as we're going to see in another video, I would suggest getting it on the same platform on which you have 1.0 or 2.0, because that way you will see character progress presumably carry across from one game to the next. However, if you're just getting it brand new, I would suggest getting it on either Xbox One or PlayStation 4, so that if you do become interested in going back and picking up 2.0 for the Marvel playsets and whatnot, you'll have the opportunity to do that on those systems and still have the best game graphically and in terms of life longevity, hopefully, that will be out there on the market. As a second best option, I would go with the Wii U version. I personally think that a lot of the charm of the game is the little figures, so I'm not sure that I would really recommend the digital-only versions. But for players on the go or players who don't care about the figures or just don't have a place to store them, the digital versions are an option. And hey, the digital versions are free to download. You just have to pay for characters and power discs and whatnot. Wait, power discs? Hinted at those. What are those again? That brings us into our next episode, the components of Disney Infinity. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the Disney Infinity players.